Hello and welcome to the Switched on Streams podcast with me, Pomster, and with Brennan Hoof. How are you going, bro?
Yeah, really good. Really good. Obviously, been a big week with what we're talking about on today's podcast.
Yeah, so
Being released.
today we are going to have a bit of a chat about Spider-Man 2, pretty big release. I haven't played it myself, but you've been playing a lot of it, so without giving any spoilers away, let's jump straight into it.
Yeah.
Tell us all about it.
Well, the first thing I have to talk about, I did an unboxing video that I haven't released yet of the collector's edition, but there is this, which is a bit hard to get on screen. It is so big, as you can sort of see, but I mean this thing is fantastic. Really become the centerpiece of my Spider-Man and Venom collection of stuff outside of my Venom #1 comic. But look, this game, without giving spoilers away and all that it's unreal. I haven't played anything for quite some time that really hits home like this game. And there's been a lot of stuff online about it's too short and all of this. The balance of this game between what's a side mission and what's a main mission is very, very thin. Like that line is, they ride it perfectly.
Okay.
All the side missions, whether they're a Miles side mission or a Peter side mission, feel like they're part of the main story. Like they all tie into it in some way or another.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So IGN gave it an 8, and I looked at it and went, "Wow, that seems really low." I still think this is going to be Game of the Year.
All right.
I can't see any other way that it wouldn't be the Game of the Year. So one thing you wanted to do with these reviews was do 3 pros, 3 cons. So I'll sort of go through them and talk about that stuff.
Go for it.
So on
I didn't have to ask you.
Nah. Well, I thought it's a good way to explain the game without the spoilers.
Sure.
Graphically, yet again, Insomniac knocking it out the park. Absolutely phenomenal. You can go up onto any number of the buildings, whether it's the Baxter Building or the Avengers Tower, Oscorp, all of those sort of buildings, and just look out over New York, and even the stuff that's outside of the boundaries of where you can go, you can still see, and it looks fantastic. And there's detail in there that looks really, really good. The game feels very different from the first two, but still feels very similar, if that makes sense. So it still feels the same way that the other two games did. But when you see a lot of these kind of games, you find with the Assassin's Creed games, the collectibles, for instance, will be very similar, or there might be a slight tweak to them, but you're still chasing a page or a feather, across multiple buildings. Whereas with this, everything's changed. So the first couple of games, you were trying to find backpacks, and there's a little Easter egg homage in there during a flashback scene very early in the game, where Peter comes across one of his backpacks and goes, "Oh, I should find a way to track these so I can collect them at a later date."
Right.
So little things like that. Whereas in this one, again, no spoilers, you're collecting something different. They've done it in a very different way. They're not just, stuck to sides of buildings or on rooftops and all that sort of stuff. So a lot of the missions are very different as well. Like the side missions. There's a lot less of the crimes to solve. But there's more of other different types of side missions that you can go and do. And the story itself, wow. Little twists and turns that you kind of don't see coming. The name drops. All of that kind of stuff. Another pro is the little Easter eggs. Obviously, being New York City, we saw in the first two games there was lots of Easter eggs with, things like Matt Murdock's law firm, like where him and what's the guy's name? The guy he works with, I can't remember. Foggy. Their law practice.
Yeah.
You could go and see the plaque. That plaque's still there. There's a little tweak to it. Go check it out for yourselves. They have added a few more little bits to this year. Some of the places are a bit more interactive. So if you're playing as Miles, you can go to the Wakandan embassy and you can interact with that embassy. Highly suggest you do it. Again, not going to give it away. I want people to discover that stuff for themselves to see what it does. But yeah, go as Miles, not as Peter, if you're going to do that. And some of these places play a part in the story as well. Again, without spoilers, I'm going to be saying that a lot in this episode. One of the key places that is tied to another comic book or another superhero plays a part within this game, and then that in turn ties into a feature from a different Insomniac series making its way into this game. Again, not going to tell you what it is, but it is very cool and unreal to play. I'll tell you off camera.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think you'll really, really get a kick out of it. Over onto the con side.
Hang on, but before you jump into the cons, you mentioned that the gameplay does feel a little bit different.
Yep.
Have you noticed significant gameplay improvements? Because obviously with the trailers that we saw, they were kind of showing off some pretty cool stuff with the gameplay, in terms of especially movement across the city and some of the combat stuff being different and quick time events and stuff like that. So, can you just go into a bit more detail about the gameplay?
Yeah. So, the fast travel stuff, I've gone through a lot of the story to try and do this review, but I've not done a lot of the side mission stuff, so there's a few areas I haven't hit the fast travel points on. So, and I don't really use the fast travel anyway. I'd prefer to, swing myself across the city. I have noticed in those moments where it does switch between the two characters, though, during the story, it is seamless.
Yeah.
Absolutely seamless. And that is fantastic. Like, you're swinging as Peter at one point, as Miles, and you've just finished a mission. He's like, I should check in on Peter. And then literally it just, like, sort of camera zooms out and boom, you're Peter swinging, like dropping in over a building, and his phone rings and it's Miles.
Yeah.
the combat feels a lot smoother. But that also ties into one of the cons I have. What else was there that we saw in the trailers that you wanted to know about?
I guess some of the combat stuff. Do you feel like there's any kind of big improvements to the combat?
I mean, a lot of it feels the same, but it does feel a lot smoother. I found it's a lot easier with performing more combos and that sort of stuff. Making sure that you stay on top of those enemies further away seems a lot easier.
Yeah.
The guys that are doing the ranged attacks and all that sort of stuff.
And what about the differences between the characters? Because that's something that they kind of...
Yeah, so what one thing they have done is obviously because they have different kinds of powers, they've given them 2 different movesets. So you've got your gadgets, for instance. Now your gadgets are the same for both characters. But then, so you use R1 for your gadgets and L1 to bring up like your little menu for your powers. Mm-hmm. Now, Peter has the spider arms that come out of the suit, and Miles obviously has his Venom Shock powers. Using those feels very different. You know, that they've both got their pros and not pros and cons. They're only pros really, but you know, that makes the characters feel very, very different just using those.
Yep.
Then obviously, as you get into the game, as we've seen in the trailers, Peter does get the black suit, and then the powers change again. They all have kind of a special ability. So you'll have like a little bar in the top corner. When that fills up, you can press L3 and R3. And you go into like a super mode kind of thing for a short time.
Right.
When you do that with the black suit, that is the best thing. Because all those enemies that might have shields or, you know, you've got to do certain things to be able to attack them with the black suit. Just, thank you. It's overpowered, but it feels so... Because you can only use it for a short time, it feels so good being able to use it. So, yeah.
And if you save it for the right moments,
yeah,
it's very effective.
And again, that ties into one of the cons that I have. So, I'll talk about that point now.
Yeah, sure.
At times, early in the game, you can get overwhelmed quite easily by enemies. So there's enough variety in the enemies that it can really overpower you if you don't use your gadgets, your powers, and like upgrade the right way.
Yep.
Early on. So they unlike the first game where it sort of built up to the army coming in and taking over New York. It slowly built to that. In this one, it's just kind of like, boom, we're here. We're hitting you hard. Oh, excuse me. And because of that, like, yeah, you can get very overwhelmed, whether it's guys with crossbows firing off explosive rounds. You've got the bit that like the really oversized enemies that hit hard. You've got the ones with the weapons. There's ones with shields. There's then like a flying eagle, and then there's like a saber-toothed tiger or a tiger, robotic tiger thing. And like they all have different attacks and different like when they're going to attack you, and obviously your spider sensors are going off. Their timings are all different. Right. So if you end up in like one of the big battles and you've got 2 or 3 of each of those coming at you, it can be quite overpowering.
Right.
If you're not paying attention, you're not using your powers, your gadgets, and everything else like that. So
on that point, have they kind of carried over all of the gadgets from the first game?
No.
And just added on top?
No.
Okay, so they've done the typical Insomniac thing of just like wiping all of your gadgets and abilities and starting from scratch again. Basically.
Yes,
or you get a small number, like a few bits and pieces. But
so most of the gadgets are open, but the gadgets have changed.
Okay.
If that makes sense. So like early on, Peter, Genki, and Miles talk about upgrades and things they've done to the suits, and you know the different gadgets that they've done. Genki talks about he's upgraded the web shooters to have a 3D printer in them, so they can like make little things on the go.
Yeah.
Which I actually thought, like, in this day and age, that's actually pretty cool and smart to put in there. So, yeah. You can see that, you know, they've still got, you know, those base things, they have toned them down. And obviously the gadgets are new, so they're technically an upgrade, but then you've got to upgrade them. So I think they've been very smart about the way they've done this to make it not feel like, you know, another sequel that we're having to start again sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean traditionally they've always done that. Like with all of the Ratchet and Clank games, you basically start from scratch. You get a base suit, and you have to buy all of your weapons again, and it's quite frustrating. Whereas like Jedi Survivor earlier this year has kind of bucked that trend of sequel video games where actually you keep everything, and it's just adding new enemies on top of that are going to require different things to be able to kill them effectively.
Yeah, I think the most common way that they've sort of, over the years, have tried to combat that is, you know, you start the game with all your stuff and something happens and you lose it all.
Yeah, you lose it. I'm not a fan of that either. It seems very cliched.
But the way Jedi Survivor did it is a top way of doing it, I think. And, you know, this probably comes in at second best. The
only potential problem with the Jedi Survivor way is if you keep doing sequels, you have a bit of a power creep problem.
Yeah.
Where suddenly all of the new enemies are so much stronger than the enemies from the previous games because you're having to just top yourself every time.
Well, there is a way to do that, and that would be to keep everything but squish the power of it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Kind of like kind of like what they ended up having to do with World of Warcraft was, okay, we've got to a point now where we didn't think we'd get to this point, but everything's just so big and powerful now. We're going to have to do a level squash and reinvent the game in a sense.
I mean, every MMO has that power creep problem, but basically.
Yeah. So the other two cons that I had was one thing that I absolutely adore about these games, and a lot of people do. Now, again, these cons are just for me, and they could just be the way that I play the game. But the web swinging seems very temperamental at times.
Right.
So I'll be swinging around, and all of a sudden, he'll start swinging back the other way. Now, I tried to test a few things with it, and one thing I did notice, and I only noticed this about 1 o'clock this morning when I was playing, and that was, I think it has to do with the building positioning. So a bit more this time than it did last time. There has to be something to grab hold of, clearly. Now, on the first game, they were a bit looser with it. So, if you were up above the building line, obviously you couldn't grab hold of anything. If you were out over the river, you couldn't grab hold of anything.
Yeah.
But if you were close enough to a building, it was sort of, okay, well, there's something there.
Exactly.
This time, the building actually has to be there. There has to be something. Even if you're below the top of the building, but you're near the top, it's like, well, there's nothing there for him to do.
Right.
So, I think part of the web slinging there might be me trying to go round a corner, and I've gone that little bit too far, and he's thrown the web out, and he's actually sort of thrown it behind himself.
Right.
Which then causes me to swing back rather than go forwards.
So you really need to kind of be careful with your timing now with the web slinging.
Yeah. The other point, which is very similar, is the wingsuit. Now, the wingsuit's very handy. Especially, those instances where, you might be up above the buildings, or, you're trying to go over a long distance that little bit quicker. The base settings for the controls for flying are a little bit temperamental.
Right.
So I haven't looked at the settings to see if I can change the sensitivity just on that point. But the first time I noticed it, before I'd really even had time to play with the wingsuit, was one of the side missions was to, with the 3D printer, create a drone. Now, I did that, and you got to fly through these points. And it goes quite quick, this drone. And you'll be, okay, I'll just move a little bit to get the angle right, and it'll, be quite sensitive to the movement. So you try and do it a bit slower, and all of a sudden it's going like...
Can you just turn that sensitivity down?
Well, that's what I'm thinking, but I haven't looked into it. I keep thinking about doing it, but then I get distracted with the actual game, and so that's something that I do need to look at.
You'd still hope that by default it was set up in a way that felt
good,
Because...
And again, it could just be my triggering, me not doing it right, which a lot of this stuff is, but they're the three cons that I've found, and they're not very big cons at that.
So if they're not very big cons, what do you think is the reason that IGN have given it an 8 and not a 9?
Well, I only sort of read through their headline, and for them, they said that they hadn't changed enough. That it still felt too much like the first one. that it wasn't.
I'm curious. What score did they give the first game?
I think they gave it a 7 or an 8. But I found this quite peculiar.
8.7 they gave it the first one.
Yeah, an 8.7. They gave this one an 8. But I think they've changed their system since then. They don't give points anymore.
Yeah. Right.
But they then did, after the same day the review came out, they did a list of top 10 Spider-Man games of all time. And Marvel's Spider-Man 2 was their number 1 pick.
I mean, go figure.
But they rated it lower than Spider-Man 1.
Presumably lower than older Spider-Man movie tie-in games.
Well, I think Spider-Man 2, the movie one, which outside of is highly regarded, was number 2. Spider-Man Dimensions, which is one of my all-time favourite ones, which brings in 4 different Spider-Men. I can't remember who the 4th one is. There's Noir Spider-Man, 2099, Peter Parker, and there's another one that they bring in. And you play across it, it's the whole thing about the Spider-Verse being fractured and blah, blah. I thoroughly loved that game on the PS3. I thought it was unreal. They put that at number 9.
Yeah, right.
So, I mean, that just shows that, everyone who does these lists and reviews and stuff like that are going to have their own opinions.
Yep. And we do about ours when we do our bracket.
Exactly. So, look, I'm thoroughly giving this a 9. I think there's still room for a bit more improvement, just on those few little bits and pieces.
I mean, Insomniac did quite a bit of DLC and patching for the first game, didn't they?
Yeah. So they did.
And then obviously, chance they'll do that here.
And then obviously we had, the Miles Morales. So I'm expecting that we are going to get the series continuing after this one, obviously. Oh, tickling me throat. But yeah, I can see them going down this route of, okay, well, let's do the main series. We'll introduce characters as we go. And as we introduce characters, some older ones might go by the wayside or might leave. And then we'll do a spin-off, a smaller one, and then we'll do another big one where, a few more characters might come in. And that, by doing it that way, your list of characters isn't growing. It's sort of staying the same. But you're keeping it fresh and innovative with different characters coming in and out of it. And, there's no reason why, Spider-Man 5, by that time Miles might have gone off to college or, something like that. He can't come back into it. Or, you might have had Miguel from Spider-Man 2099 might have made an appearance, but he's gone back to the future. He might come back, all of that sort of stuff. And no, there isn't spoilers there for that. If any of that stuff does happen towards the end of the game, I haven't got that far into it yet.
Yeah. I would imagine that this is probably not going to do quite as well financially as the first game, but there are various reasons for that. I mean, firstly, it be just about the consoles, and like the first one being on PS4, and that being the current console generation at the time. Heaps of people had PS4s, and it was kind of obvious to get Spider-Man. Whereas I think with this one, it's just a potential that not quite as many people are going to buy it for that reason. But also, I think it's just a case with lots of things like difficult second album syndrome. It sounds like they've done a good job of dealing with that. But IGN's perspective is it's not different enough, which is sometimes a criticism that's leveled at the first sequel in the series.
I kind of disagree. So there's a lot of hype around the first game.
Yeah.
And when I went to pick that up, I went in, was waiting outside the store before it opened. There was maybe one other person there. When I went to pick this up on Friday, store opened at 9 a.m. I got there as two other people pulled up. I was there 5 minutes before 9 o'clock. I was first in the line. By the time they opened the door, there was 10 of us standing there. By the time I got to the counter and picked mine up and went to walk out, the queue was back through the store, out the store, and out the door.
Yeah, right.
Just the people waiting to pick up Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
Now, have you been into JB Hi-Fi in Ballarat since they've revamped it?
Yes.
Yeah, so you know where the counter is and how far the door is away from the counter.
Yeah.
And yeah, like it was crazy to look at. Like, I haven't seen anything like that for a game release since probably Mass Effect 3. And that was a midnight launch.
Yeah.
Don't say,
Definitely.
Actually, no, I take that back. Grand Theft Auto 5 midnight launch.
Oh yeah.
That was that was on par, but probably a little bit bigger.
Mm-hmm.
Just that touch bigger than the Mass Effect 3.
I guess enough people have PlayStation 5s now that like it's going to do really good sales.
Exactly.
I would be interested to see that once we've had a full week since release to compare. So maybe we'll talk about that in next week's episode.
Yeah.
Compare sales in the first week from the first game to the second game.
Yeah, definitely. I don't. They might have released what it did on the first day, but I mean, all I've seen for the last 2 days on all the PlayStation pages and stuff like that I'm in on Facebook and all that sort of stuff has been about Spider-Man.
Yeah.
There was talk early doors of a trophy glitch, but I haven't come across it yet. In saying that, trophy-wise, it does look like it's a very simple but fun platinum to get, much like the first two were. So it'll be another one to add to my growing collection, which is, I think, nearly at 50 platinums now.
I think they did a really good job with the trailers in building hype for the game. As we've seen recently from for example, Final Fantasy VII, the sequel that they're doing. I forgot the name of it.
Rebirth.
The Rebirth. Yeah. They've gone way overboard with the trailers for that, and basically you can see the whole game already.
Those
So-
games are massive, though.
They are, but they've shown an awful lot of story and gameplay in many trailers already.
But I feel like they did that with the first one as well. And there was still so much in that game that we didn't see.
Sure, but the vast majority of that story was already known because it was a remake.
Yeah, but then so's a lot of this one. You know, that wasn't the whole game.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, continue your point.
So I think they struck that balance really well with the trailers for this, where they were showing a lot of gameplay. They weren't giving much of the story away. They were building hype in a really good way, like they were showcasing the game in its best light.
Yeah, definitely.
And you know that's probably because they left it quite late before announcing the game. You know, and they were showing gameplay trailers fairly close to release, really.
Yeah.
When the game was already getting close to its kind of polishing stages.
I feel like Insomniac especially, but Sony have really started to find exactly what works in terms of building the right amount of hype around a game.
Yeah.
That, you know, okay, we're not going to announce the game. Oh, we might go, okay, it's in the works. Or drop some hints that it's in the works. But then at this point, we're going to fully announce it with a little teaser. And then at this point, we'll release a trailer. This point, we'll release a trailer. Release a final one here. And then bang the games out. And there might be, you know, a few little screen grabs, or here's some of the suits that you can get in game that they might release. And can I just say, the suits in this game, there are so many of them.
There were a lot in the first game, weren't there?
Yeah, well, now you've got 2 Spider-Men.
Yeah.
So, double again. And I reckon that they'd be close to double just for Peter. I'd have to look into that exactly, but I've seen, obviously I've unlocked a lot of them, but I've seen some of the ones I haven't, and I cannot wait. There is a nice little Easter egg in there for an upcoming Insomniac game on Miles' side. And I'm hoping that we might be getting a bit more of what we've got from this Spider-Man in future games, and that the suits that we get in this one are a prelude to that. Because, yes, again, I'll talk to you about that off camera. Not giving any spoilers away for the fans. Yeah, so I'm giving it a 9. I thoroughly suggest everybody goes and plays this if you've got a PlayStation. I think it's going to be Game of the Year. It's probably going to be my Game of the Year, but, you know, we've still got, I think, just over a month before we do that episode of the podcast, which we are going to try and get the rest of the squad involved and do it live at the table. With all of us.
So we can have more than 2 opinions.
Yeah. We might even do it out at the bar. But we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Should probably move on to the bracket.
Indeed. Yep. Let's do it.
All right. Well, honourable mentions for this week. Resident Evil 4, Devil May Cry 3, God of War, Battlefront 2, Star Wars Battlefront 2, Lego Star Wars, the original Lego Star Wars. That really kickstarted that whole Lego game franchise of doing, you know, what did we get? We got all the Harry Potters, we got, what else did we get? Jurassic Parks, Jurassic World.
Was it the first collaboration that they did?
I think so. We'd had a couple of Lego. We had a couple of Lego games before that, but this was the one that, you know, really started the collaborations. Oh, well, of course, we've got the Batman games, the DC superhero and villain ones, the Marvel ones. Fantastic. Oh, and the Lord of the Rings one too. Civilization 4, Age of Empires 3, Need for Speed Most Wanted, one of the biggest franchises of the 2000s, Guitar Hero, which then obviously spawned, you know, Rockstar and all those others.
Rock Band. Yeah.
No, Rock Band, that's the one. I was never very good at them. When they rebooted Guitar Hero a few years back and they changed the guitars, I could do them a lot better, but I was never good at them. Your pick for this week?
So you mentioned first on the honourable mentions list was Resident Evil 4, and I kind of feel bad about not picking Resident Evil 4 after recently going and playing the remake and thoroughly enjoying it. But I have gone for a racing game that I played more than any other, and that is Gran Turismo 4.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Can I just say one of the best opening cutscenes of any video game ever.
Oh, absolutely unreal.
And just so much content in that game. I think it's probably only until the most recent one, which is 7, that they've topped the amount of content that they put in Gran Turismo 4.
Yeah.
And
you did play
so many tracks, so many different race series. It was amazing.
And you did play an absolute crap load of that game. Mm-hmm. There was so many times like I'd only just moved back to Australia when you got that, and the amount of times like I'd walk in the house and I'd be like, okay, right, where's Stu? Oh, he's in there playing Gran Turismo 4 again. I think you were actually playing Gran Turismo 4 during the first half of the Australia-Uruguay game, when Australia like qualified for the World Cup for the first time in like, what was it, 30 odd years or something.
Yeah.
John Aloisi penalty.
Aloisi penalty. Yeah.
Absolutely unreal. So it looks like we are having a bit of a racing theme this year, because my pick is Midnight Club 3 Dub Edition. Now, a lot of people will scream at me for not putting Need for Speed Underground in there and picking this one. But I feel like this game just had that something different. It did everything that Underground did. It might not have been as polished, but it just had that something different. Whether it was, you know, the addition of motorbikes, or I don't know. There was something about it that just made me go, I actually prefer this game, and I really want to just keep playing and racing and updating cars. And
I get what you mean. Like the level of customization in Midnight Club 3 was basically, you know, the same as what you got in Need for Speed Underground, which was a lot.
Yeah.
But then on that, I just feel like the free roaming was way better in Midnight Club. Whereas it felt like in Underground, you're just kind of going from race to race.
Yeah. Yeah, you're not wrong. Not wrong at all.
Whereas you could just drive around the city of Midnight Club and you know just enjoy driving around and then jump into a race whenever you wanted to.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And the PSP version wasn't that bad either. When they ported it over onto that, so you know. Anyway, that's our show for this week.
Yeah, it's a shame Rockstar haven't made another Midnight Club.
Yeah, look, maybe somewhere down the track, hopefully they will. Because, yeah, fantastic series, fantastic games. But for now, we're just going to live on the nostalgia. All right.
Yep.
We tried to keep it short this week, or shorter. I think we've managed to knock about 20 minutes off. You've got stuff to go do. I've got stuff to go do. I've then got to edit this and upload it and yada, yada, yada. You know where to find us. And we'll see you all next week. Adios, guys.